this boxed, one-size-fits-all idea of education that every child should learn at the same rate, at the same time, in the same way is freaking ridiculous. Just think about all the varieties of people, all the varieties in which people mature and think and behave, and all, the desires they have and the dreams and all this stuff. And you think your one box is going to fit everybody properly. And we can't say anything about that. Hey, what's up, my friend? My name is Daniel Moss. I'm a 20-year homeschooling dad. I've got 4 kids, took them all the way through homeschooling. I've been a part of countless homeschool groups, been on the board of different co-ops, and just been really plugged in for a long time. And I couldn't help myself. I had to do a little series breaking down this Jubilee debate between 4 homeschool representatives and 4 government school representatives, and just kind of bring in my experience, bring in some of the things that I've learned over the years through books and experiences and this and that or whatever, and hopefully kind of lay to rest some of these things that are some of the typical stereotypes that you'll hear out there. I hope you enjoy. If you like it, subscribe. There's more coming. Have a great day.
Parents should have a say in what their children learn at school. Will the agreeers please step forward?
I feel like it's to a degree for me. I'm sure we disagree on the degree. I think small say. Mostly leave it to the educators, and you're probably not going to like a lot of what your kids are taught in school. And I feel like that's what's important about public schools. That's why I'm on this side. But I think it's important to...
I can't with this stuff. Like, this is such a crazy question to me. It's crazy to me that we could even ask the question and feel like that's even a legitimate question. Should parents have a say in what their children learn at school? And then for this guy who's a teacher, a government employee, to sit there and act like, yeah, you get a tiny, tiny say, but at the end of the day, it's really important that your kids learn all kinds of things that you don't like your kids learning. It's really important because somebody decided that that's really important, because somebody decided that that's what makes society good. It's for your kids to learn stuff that you don't want them to learn. That's what makes society function, right? That's the job of the educator. It's not to make sure that your kid can be a functioning member of society in terms of they can get a job, or they can start a business, or they know how to emotionally regulate, right? Of course, that's part of the package, I know. But it's really important, actually, that we make sure that your kids learn stuff you don't want them to learn. That's the beauty of school. I just can't.
Learn and have that exposure to all these different diverse topics, diverse ideas, diverse everything. But I think it's silly to say that parents shouldn't have any say in what their kids are being taught. They're the parents. Absolutely.
But they're not, you said, you're not going to like a lot of what they taught.
I admit, I misspoke.
That's all right, I'm just going to
I doubt you'll hate a lot of it, but I'm sure there are some things.
What are those things?
I'm sure maybe very religious people will want religion more taught, and not religious people will not want that taught. Political stuff, like with my students, I try and cover everything in a very fair way. I had a student come up to me and say, Mr. Kean, what's the difference between gay and LGBTQ? And then I tried to cover that in like a very fair way that like no parent could ever get offended by. And
what grade?
This was 3rd grade. He was curious, and he clearly had not had that conversation at home, or didn't feel comfortable talking with his parents about that. So
yeah, you know what happens here? You know why kids lose their ability to talk to their parents? Definitely there's a place for the guilt landing on the shoulder of a lot of parents, unfortunately. But you know what else does drive that? Schools, because the parent is actually sending their kid to this other place, saying they're the expert to learn from, and they're the authority. And so trust them, right? And then again, like I talked about in the last video, there's this peer orientation thing that goes on. Parents have to be very careful not to allow there to become a division between the child and the family, and especially the parents. There's a lot of work that goes into that when your kid is going to government schools. You got to build up that bond. It's very, very, very important.
I think stuff like that, I think it's so good that there's a safe space in public school for that, and that might be missing in homeschools.
Well, I think you brought up something really important right now, specifically about like religion, or like if public schools are if they're talking about, like, let's say the Bible, bringing that into the curriculum or teaching about it.
Which it is right now. The 10 Commandments are being forced to be displayed in some schools.
And it's
which
the other
is,
side too. It's also not promoting, but sending kids and their beliefs are bashed. It's not just what you teach; it's what you maybe teach against. And it's not maybe intentional, but I think that's part of the.
And even more important than that is that a lot of times some of the most influential type of propaganda is what's not taught, actually. It's everything that we teach, but we don't teach it exactly right. We don't give all the information. We leave out certain stuff, certain context, certain, events or whatever it is. And it's in the absence of those things that you can shape a mind, and the mind doesn't even know it's being shaped. It's actually more dangerous to say, let's say it's a Christian kid, right? And they believe in God and they believe in creation or whatever it is, right? And that kid goes to school and that teacher right out of the gates were to say, hey, there's no God and there's no creation and all that stuff. It's just evolution. Darwin had it all right. And if they come at you firing like shots like that, that kid is instantly going to go home and be like, oh, teacher said blah, 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 blah. But it's actually a lot more effective when the teacher is more nuanced and careful, and they don't say things in such an overt way. They can slip things in and leave out things. They can say things about, say, Bible or whatever it is, Quran or whatever. They can take shots at those things in a sneakier way without being very clear that they're doing it. Or they can portray the Bible a certain kind of way while leaving out other context in the Bible that would actually paint the picture a different way. A lot of really sneaky ways of doing things like that.
Conversation, it kind of cuts both ways.
I'm actually a public school teacher, but I recently started homeschooling my son. And it goes the same with political ideology too. Teachers are more open about their political ideologies, about their self-identification, things like that. I personally don't believe that belongs in the school. You are there to teach facts. You are not there to promote ideology.
I would think that would come up so much more in homeschooling, no? But that was my assumption, is a lot of parents are doing it because they want their certain ideology to be taught.
Well, I feel like within the home, that's okay. If you come from a certain ethnic background or religious background, do you not want to pass that on, right? If you're Muslim or Japanese, don't you want to pass on your culture to your children? What's wrong with that?
But are you also teaching all of the religion? Okay,
exactly.
So then that would be a...
Whatever. Oh my gosh. No, the history of government schooling, a big part of it was actually to wipe out whole entire bodies of thought and culture. It was to homogenize people, to make people better patriots of America. There was an attack on Catholicism with the public school system, and it was to kind of like, Christians of that time thought that Catholicism was a major threat on the republic, and so they wanted to use schools as a way of getting that out. They also wanted to use it as a way to make sure that other cultures became homogenized in America and all that. Now, you might have feelings like, you might think, hey, that sounds great or whatever, but the point being, school has always been a vehicle for agendas to be pushed on people. It always, from the very beginning, it literally has always been that way. There's never been a time where it wasn't. And so it's just it's a very effective tool for doing it. There's a reason why, Hitler, when he would conquer places, he would go right to the classrooms and he would start to indoctrinate the youth at their early age, because he knew that it was, if you can get a hold of a mind young, that you can really shape a society downstream, right? It's always been that way. That's literally the purpose of schooling, has always been to shape minds. And then the mom right there, the homeschooling mom that's also a teacher, do you teach other religions? Yeah, I'll be honest. I think she's kind of full of it a little bit. Not saying that the topics don't come up, because they might come up, but does she really teach them? I think it's unfair to act like she's in a position where she can really teach those religions and do fair representation of those religions. But I don't think that I don't think homeschooling has to play that game. Like, who's this woman right here, this school counselor, to even assume that that woman should have to? Why should she have to? Why should that mom have to teach her kid all the other religions? Why do you have to? I understand your pragmatic reasons, or this woman's pragmatic reasons for why you think it might be a good idea. But let's get real. Let's get real. The school system sucks at teaching these things, and probably most homeschool parents suck at teaching it. But why does it even need to happen? Just be real about it. You've heard it said that those types of things should be taught, but must it be? I don't think so. I think that's absolutely nonsense. Complete and total nonsense. So I would just push back on that, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that if you got a take.
The point.
We actually got our kids to argue both sides.
Yes, but it's not the case for all homeschool. But that would
the
be
best homeschool.
But most of them.
Okay, so she's talking, the counselor's doing the bad apple thing again. We could do the bad apple thing all day long. I could do okay, how many of all the people that have gone and shot up schools, how many of them were government schooled versus homeschooled, right? I don't know the numbers, but I would bet everything I own that vast majority of them were government schooled. What does that say? Here we go, bad apple. It doesn't say much. It could be something. It could be symptomatic of something, but it, in and of itself, it doesn't really say much. And if you could find a bad apple, it's not really a very strong argument at all. So these bad apple arguments are a joke to me.
The ideal.
Some exception doesn't say throw it out. We homeschooled all 5 of our kids from birth all the way to college. We taught our kids to think critically. So we'd go to movies even. And after a movie, we'd go have nachos and we'd say, what do we like? What do we not? On religious views, on political views. Let's understand both sides so we can actually know what we're talking about. That was our homeschool.
So, staying on this topic of should parents have a say in what is being taught at school? Let's talk specifically about sexual education. Where do you all stand on that?
So a very good friend of mine is a Puerto Rican immigrant who was adopted by Jewish American parents. She's gone to a private Jewish school all of her life until high school. And I remember very clearly the topic of sex education came up in a conversation, and she basically told us that she had absolutely no education. And so with public school, with so many students being there, things are bound to happen. I feel like a lack of education for such a basic human function was really detrimental, where she had to rely on her friend group to educate her on those things.
I understand what you're saying. I have known someone who was in a similar situation. They didn't get any education, and then they ended up in a situation that was unfortunate where they didn't know what was happening. So yes, we do want to make sure that there is some education, but I feel like predominantly that should take place within the home. Ideally, it doesn't always happen, but I feel like when we start promoting ideologies and self-identification and all these things that are coming up these days, I feel like sometimes that gets a little too far. It also depends on what the age of the child is. In homeschool, the nice thing is you can talk to your child when they are ready, because that's different for every child. Some kids are very curious, very young, and some kids, they're just I don't even want to think about that. In the public schools, they seem to be bringing that down to a younger and younger age, which I don't agree with.
Even that kind of argument from that woman right there, every state is different, districts are different. Are most government schools bringing that to a lower age or higher age? Who the heck knows? We think government schools are normal. We think they're healthy. We think they're natural. We don't really question them at all. Government schools don't really teach us to question their existence, do they? We don't get taught the history of government schools. We're not taught that government schools were used for certain reasons early on, and that they're very good at developing a reflex behavior in schooled children. We're not taught things like that. When we're in school, we're taught who are the heroes of society, and we got police officers, firefighters, teachers, things like that, right? We're not being taught to actually ask questions about the system. And I would just challenge you to really think about it. Is everything you think about school the result of you just being made to believe that it's normal, that it's necessary, that it's natural? If that is the case, and you can start to actually think critically and ask tough questions about it, you might start to have some different conclusions about things. I just think it's really strange, this thought that It's normal to take your kid away from the parent, especially at kindergarten, 5 years old, 4. Some people are doing like age 3 and stuff like that. And you're taking them away from that source that's supposed to be the strongest connection in their life. It's supposed to model what it means to be alive and to be a human being. And they're taken away from that person, put into a box, like literal box, an emotional box, intellectual box, spiritual box. And they're put in an environment with other peers their age. So now they're segregated. They learn how to only interact with people in their segregated age group, who are also stripped from their main connection that they're supposed to have. They're put in this environment when they're supposed to be kids. Like if you read Peter Gray's work, I talked about him in the last video. His book is called Free to Learn. They're supposed to be playing without rules, without structure. Let them play. But we put them in this highly structured environment, taken away from what is actually natural to them. And then they're under the tutelage of an absolute stranger. And now this stranger at age 6, 7, 8, 9, they're supposed to tell them how sex works. It just feels normal because it's what we grew up with. It's what was done to us. But it's weird.
You say promoting. I just wanted to jump on that word because that really stood out.
Okay.
We're not telling anyone you have to be this. We're not telling anyone this. I just say these people exist. Treat everyone with respect. That's all. That's all I say. I think that's all most teachers say.
I think that's great. But where I think we come from that's confusing is we look at some of the literature out there and what people are teaching, and I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, and it's like, it's not just teaching what, there's how to in there, and how to at really young ages.
But not even just how to. At age 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't need to know how other people live their life. That's not your job to teach me, buddy. It's not your job. My job, read Peter Gray again. My job is to play. Play with other kids. Play with my parents. Play. At young ages, that's my job, is to play. It's not to learn that there's 2 daddies somewhere. That's not my job. That's not, I don't need to know that. But I might end up playing with a kid who's got 2 daddies or something, and it's like, oh, okay, you know? But that's, I'm in the real world. I'm playing. I'm doing my thing. Right? I don't need to be cooped up and have some stranger just telling me about these things just because they feel like it's important enough for me to know. I don't need that. It's weird. It's really weird.
About like sex specifically.
Yeah. Here's how to.
Would you be able to lay out specific examples of that?
Just do some search on it. It doesn't matter, liberal, conservative, whatever. It's out there in detail, where it might be details on cunnilingus or flush, you know, it's positions and all this stuff to elementary kids, and it's happening.
There was a library book at my library, and it was a picture book written down for like first graders, and it literally showed positions. These are different ways that your mommy can do it with your daddy.
Would you be able to state the book, like the name of that book?
I believe.
Lady, stop lying. Stop. You're seriously acting like this stuff doesn't go on. Stop it. Like, what are you doing? I mean, we got to be freaking joking here. As if kids are not being introduced to this stuff at young ages in government schools. Don't even lie. Don't even act like that. Not to mention, that's from the teachers themselves or administrators or whatever. But I mean, when I was in government schools 30 years ago, I remember kids bringing dirty pictures on the playground and showing dirty pictures on the playground, or in class. The teacher in 9th grade, I remember first year teaching, poor lady, we were terrible. And I was in Burbank, California schools, distinguished schools. Like, these were good schools. Everyone wanted to come to Burbank schools because we had the best. And we had literally one student stabbed the teacher's hamster to death in class. And then when she would turn her back, the kid in the front row would turn around and lift up a dirty magazine for everyone to look at. And then we'd all start laughing and he'd sit back down. I mean, what are we doing? That was then. Now we got cell phones everywhere. Stop. Just stop it. It was crazy.
I believe it was something facetious, like you come from an egg, and then it was like talking about well, it's not really from an A. I can't remember the exact name of the book, but I can look it up.
I don't know the school district that you had worked at.
I will say, that wasn't at a school I worked with. It was just at the library. But
the public library.
Yes, but I've seen things like that within other schools as well. I've seen things in other more liberal places. I've seen posts online about, look at, this is an actual book from the curriculum, like the ABCs of LGBT, different things like that. It is happening. It's just not everywhere.
Right. But speaking from a public school perspective, I teach here in Los Angeles, and I would say that's probably one of the most liberal areas where you could be. And again, this could be a solo experience.
Another thing to understand too is that if we're just really honest, like just as a people, just as an individual, just be honest. You know how this works. When you have a different worldview, in that worldview that you operate from, there's almost like a hierarchy of values that you operate from, right? There's certain things that you give a higher value to than others. And other worldviews might completely invert that. And the things that you think are not valuable are high value to them, and vice versa, and whatever. And as we operate from our worldview, some of the things that we say and do can seem totally and completely innocent to us because of our worldview. Whereas other people, because it's inverted, the thing that seems normal to us can seem totally repulsive to them. And that's how we can speak past each other. So if we're just really honest, like, we got to be honest that just the way we're cut and the fact that we do operate from paradigms and worldviews, right? It opens up the opportunity for these types of things to happen, even if it's not happening on purpose. Like, even if you're not sitting there going, let me go ruin little Jimmy, right? You're not thinking like that. Just because you operate from a different worldview, some of the things you're saying and doing might be coming from a really loving place in your heart. And yet other people can find it to be really repulsive. Just be honest. Just know that's true. You know it. You know it's true. And so how can we imagine even for 1 second that stuff like that's not going on in classrooms? Is it happening in every classroom? No. I don't think we should play the bad apple game even with this. But let's just be real. It does go on. It does. And in varying levels and whatnot. And so every time I put my kid in a government school, I don't know what's going on in that school, in that classroom. I don't know. When I homeschool them, I do know. I do know. Let's be real about this.
But I have never experienced any of that, such radical type of things in the school setting. You said the public library. That's completely different. I taught 5th grade, and that's where puberty starts happening, all of the changes. We keep constant communication with parents, changing bodies, all of this. These are the topics we're gonna talk about. Here's a permission slip because we're talking about these topics. We keep that avenue open with parents.
Yeah, in
and
most
it's up to the parents,
cases, but not all cases.
Yeah, I just wanted to differentiate.
It's simply the fact that when you put your kid in a classroom, you don't know what's going on, right? It could be unintentional. It could be the other students. It could be anything. When a teacher says to a student, what pronouns do you use? That teacher is not trying to be a horrible, awful monster of a human being. They're not. I don't think they are. But it could really rub somebody the wrong way that it's like, why is my kid in this place? And they're having to even be asked a question like that. That looks a lot like indoctrination to somebody who doesn't come from that worldview. Stop playing games, everybody. It's just how it works.
Because I hear this so much online. People say they're teaching our kids this. Like, a book existing is not the same as it being taught, it being in a curriculum. And I think it's super important.
But it is in curriculums too.
You think that book is in
But you were
curriculum?
speaking
Well, not that one
towards public
specifically,
school.
but books with that.
And if they are in curriculums, you'd agree with us, that's bad.
But are they?
So
They're not.
Well,
They're
why-
not.
They're
let
not.
them just study.
I think that's the real life thing that it's not.
Okay, let's keep it that
I
way.
think it sounds
Great.
No, absolutely. I
Great.
agree with you that
so
it's out
if I
there.
give you the evidence,
I would
you'll
love it.
convert.
Not convert.
You'll
Or
convert.
I would say that's bad. I don't think that speaks. If you find like one example, that's not going to convert
but
me.
she's framing it that way.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if you're going to frame it that way,
If
let me
that's
play
what you
that
want to
game.
hear, that's okay.
It's
I'm
not
sure
what I
that's
wanna
what
hear, it's
was
what you're
taught in
saying.
the homeschooling
Yeah,
situation
that's how
too,
it goes.
right?
I'm fine saying that's a bad thing thing. That
Yeah,
shouldn't
I
be in
agree.
school. I don't think it
Right.
is being taught in
I
any
think we all agree.
Our kids,
Never
You're,
heard
you're
of
We all
saying in
agree.
your experience, you have not seen that to be the case at all.
once.
You found
Never.
something, maybe
Oh,
a
yeah,
school where you
lots.
saw it
In
happen.
school.
In this day and age where you have giant billboards and commercials and blatant all this sexual stuff in the songs and kids are inundated with it, your child could be watching something and then the widgets or whatever make it go on to something else. So now it's here. Or you heard that Johnny and Fred were doing something in the bathroom and now everyone's whispering about it. Well, you better address it. If it's not getting addressed in I think the best way to do it would be to bring the children and the parents into an assembly and then kind of go over the incident that happened.
But it sounds like you're making an argument for a more comprehensive underanding of these things
Well,
that
if
should
it
be taught in
comes
school.
up, I don't think children should be like, oh, you shouldn't hear about this yet because you're not old enough. No, if you already opened up this kind of can of worms and they're only 4, then they need to know why such and such has 2 mommies, if that's one of your friends that you hang out with at the playground.
So do you agree that sex ed should take place in the public schools?
I think so, and parenting classes, for sure. They should bring all of that stuff back. Home ec, taking care of the egg.
What
and keeping
age?
it-
What age should sexual education start?
Thing is, it's really on how the children mature. Like, what age are they mature enough to understand it and not just see it as something that's scary or see it as, like immaturely.
As a homeschool dad and family, if they had not asked us by the age of 9, we would tell them. Because we wanted to stay ahead of the conversation for them to not get caught and surprised. And,
learn from
and
it.
at that
Yes.
time, where we were, that was good. And so we explained it all, and every kid says, oh, so y'all have had it 3 times, number of kids. And I
At
go,
least.
well, there's more to it. So.
Yeah, in our homeschool, it was different for every child. Every child, we had a different age. And sometimes it would be a circumstance that would come up that we felt like, ooh, we want to get ahead of the game, like what Fred was talking about right there. And for example, one of our children was going to go off to a camp, a week-long church camp. And we're like, those kids, they might be opening their mouth and saying some stuff. And so we're going to make sure our child's prepared. And he was only 10 at that time. Whereas other kids, they were a little older and whatnot. But again, the question here, should parents have a say in what their children learn at school? I mean, what are we even doing? As a parent should have a right to be able to decide the order and the sequence and the timing of those types of things above and beyond what anybody else thinks. This boxed, one-size-fits-all idea of education that every child should learn at the same rate, at the same time, in the same way is freaking ridiculous. Just think about all the varieties of people, all the varieties in which people mature and think and behave, and all, the desires they have and the dreams and all this stuff. And you think your one stupid box is going to fit everybody properly. And we can't say anything about that? Like, give me a break. Give me a break. Okay. So that was the end of that one. If you like that kind of thing, I'm going to keep bringing it. There's like 6 more segments on this debate here between homeschoolers and government schoolers. And I think this next one could be pretty interesting too. Hit like, subscribe, give me some comments. I have not done videos like these last 2 yet. I'm really curious to see what kind of comments and feedback I get from people. It's going to be really interesting. Those 4 people sitting over there on the right, on the enemy side, right? Whatever. They're not my enemies. They're human beings. I love them. I want the best for them. Sometimes these conversations can get kind of yucky. And I think at the end of the day, we need to remember we're all humans. We're all people. We're all deserving of love and respect. And so that's the way I want to view them, as much as I can not stand what they say a lot of the time. At the end of the day, I hope you know that you're loved, honestly, genuinely. And have a good day. Take care.